Welcome to our second winter webinar, where we're kind of delivering on a monthly basis some various different bits and pieces around facets of business that we hope people will find interesting, coming at it from various different angles. And I think this is a particularly interesting area of development within businesses. It's one of the most kind of frightening spaces for a lot of businesses to be thinking about. How do I take on talent? How do I grow my business? How do I do those various bits and pieces around that? But I came to the world of hiring people through sort of kind of building teams and working along those lines when I was working up in London. And things that I kind of found really interesting was when we did the outreach programs to sixth forms, when we did working with the graduate intake from many different universities, and we always had a kind of a flow of talent coming into the various different areas of the business, and that was part of the development within the organization. And I think a lot of times businesses shy away from that because they get a little bit kind of blinded by what it takes to actually bring people in, do a lot of the documentation, treat people as employees, get involved in that. But it's a learning journey, and it's a really safe learning journey when we think about it from the perspective of engaging with universities and engaging with students and engaging with people like that. So that's kind of like the flavor of this particular event. I wanted to sort of suggest that we're kind of moving these forward on a monthly basis. We may do one in December, but it depends. Probably we'll go into the early part of January rather than try and interrupt everybody's sort of kind of downtime into the December period. But anyway, so this is us. So this is the Weave, and we've been around now since 2019 in this particular current format. We always are looking for new avenues, new ways of supporting the entrepreneurial ecosystem around North Essex, and the models that we kind of look at and develop and sort of move forward, focusing a lot on social learning, cohort-based learning where we can. So we deliver accelerator programs, we deliver challenge-based events, and I'm delighted to say that we'll be starting another one of those in January this year when we bring out another iTeens program for Essex University. So that'll be exciting as well, because again, that's that opportunity of bringing the talent pool and businesses together. I think this is kind of, in a nutshell, what we believe at the end of the day, and what this is really all about, is encouraging us to get out of our comfort zones, to actually do things that maybe we wouldn't think necessarily that this is what we really should be doing. It's not quite right for us. We're on a growth trajectory. We don't know where we're off to in that regard. So I think there are areas of how do we kind of develop that. So this biggest risk is ultimately getting us out of our comfort zone and thinking about how we can move our businesses forward strategically, and ultimately to the betterment of the communities and the people that we're working with. So it really is for us that area of encouragement, aspiration, and ultimately putting into the resources into the region so that we can actually start to grow that capacity, grow those networks, and ultimately drive some growth and really sort of shine a light on that vibrancy and excitement that exists out there. So systemically, that's our model. We work with startups. We work to look at all of the relevant components of the startups. We're not a sales training organization. We're not a marketing company, but we bring together a kind of holistic perspective and a viewpoint around businesses. And a systemic business and a systemic startup is ones that look internally for viable models that can actually survive and build resilience, and also at the same time are very aware of their environment, very aware of the impact and the footprint that they're creating, both ecologically but also socially. So those are the guiding principles about how we think of business development as being systemic. And it's really important to us because we ultimately appreciate that we're in that sort of world where businesses have become a little bit sort of not toxic in a lot of the way that people view them, but ultimately we want to change that narrative and see business as that force for good, business for that force for change. And that's something that we're very involved with. So if any business and any kind of piece of development, when we're thinking about it, this triangle is something which is fundamental to us and to our way of thinking. It's where we have that clarity about what matters to us, and that as we grow our businesses, as we develop our businesses, we align those personal values to our organizational values. And that transference between ourselves, our values that go on to align to our organizational values, that DNA is transferred. And we can start to look at that from the perspective of our recruitment strategy, the development of the talent pool that we're building, everything along that line. So I know that, for instance, that there are businesses where we strategically engage with our customers as our employees. We grow our communities as well within that particular framework, and we find our organizational alignment within that particular world as well. And ultimately, once we've got that kind of alignment between ourselves and the way that we're talking and the way we're thinking about the business and the way that it's growing, we're also aligning ourselves to our customers' values. We're putting out, we're projecting who we are, what matters to us, our if you like, our cause, our beliefs, everything like that. And that ultimately acts as the beacon to the right customers. And that brings in people that we really want to actually work with. And it's a kind of a challenging process in any business as we grow and as we develop, because we always need to be challenging ourselves. Are these people the right customers? Equally, when we build our businesses, are our employees, as our talent pool, the right people to be within the business? We have a philosophy within the Weave when we talk about hiring and we talk about development. We always say at the co-founding stage, we're working together around vision and values. We're aligning those aspects within the area of the co-founders, the directors, the leadership within that aspect of the business. And then ultimately, when we need to actually start to grow and develop that talent pool, we're looking at engaging with competencies. We're looking at engaging with fundamentally strong skill sets around particular areas of development within the business. And again, values line to very much towards that sort of area. But those people we are hiring, if you like, for those competencies, those people to come into our organization. And then ultimately, when we want to deliver projects and when we're finding ourselves into that particular space where we need specialist areas of development, we're contracting in, or we're hiring, or we're contracting in those skills on a temporary basis. So the philosophy for us is very much value orientated, both in terms of the hiring pool and also in terms of the co-founders that we work with. So we use the business model canvas as well as a kind of tool for everyday use within the business. There are multiple ways of using the canvas, and what we wanted to think about as well is terms of strategy within the business. So we're all on a trajectory, we're all heading in a particular direction, and it's really important that we understand that that's a kind of a mapping process to our business. We know at the end of the day what our business looks like here, but do we think about what it looks like within that 5-year period? Do we think about what may be a canvas, if we were to do one for a 5-year projection, what it would look like within our business? And then ultimately we can do that and we can bring it back strategically in the 4th year, the 3rd year, the 2nd year, the 1st year, and we can start to extract some of those core goals and aspirations within that period of time. And that's again where the canvas can become really, really adaptable, really useful in terms of that strategic development when we're building out that roadmap. So it's really important that strategy is a big, big part of our thinking when it comes to both the development of the business, but aligning also our hiring intentions, the areas of activity which become predominantly really important to us. And that what we really want to be thinking about is where we can fill those areas, where we can actually start to work effectively and bring talent into them so that we can bolster those particular areas of development. So when we work with the business model canvas and we sit down with a business and we speak to them about where they're going, where they're heading, it's up to us to actually then embed those canvases in those strategic areas and then ask ourselves, how have we achieved that? Where are we going within that? What does it look like within that particular space? Because what we have got today, right, will be very different to what we're anticipating and what we're planning for and projecting for in the future. And that, of course, is also very much around people. So ultimately, it's that alignment, that strategy that needs to be embedded within it. So the business strategy for us is the kind of the predominant starting block of any form of conversation when we're starting to develop this and build this out. And then within that business strategy, there is a strategy for people development, people onboarding, what we need to be doing within that particular space. And as we're growing the people and as we're thinking about people within our organization, we also have to invest our time and effort into this leadership development side of ourselves and in what we want to do, but not necessarily just of ourselves, but also the people that are coming through our business, because everybody needs to absorb some aspect of that leadership within that. And then ultimately we give them that area of development, that movement forward. So leadership development is fundamentally one of these things that you can learn and that you can practice. And one of the safest spaces to practice this is through when you're working with universities, with students, with areas of, if you like, short-term but impactful and meaningful connections to our business. So when we actually work with internships and when we do various things like that, these are short-term kind of contracts that we can embed ourselves within the business, but they are learning grounds. There are places where we can learn to become better leaders, and we can develop people, and we can learn how to develop people, and that we are in preparation and growing when we're actually in preparation for when our organization starts to demand more of us and starts to actually ask some more fundamental questions. So that kind of process of organizational development is really sort of part and integral to our talent management and our hiring strategy. But it's a space where we can learn. It's a space where we can really invest that time and energy into overall growing our business and thinking about it fundamentally where it needs to be going in the future. So traditional talent models look very much around this kind of area of development, acquisition and recruitment, places of how do we find people? Do we contract that out to various areas? Do we work with various things like Indeed or Gumtree or whatever platform it is, LinkedIn? Do we work with those platforms? And the answer to that is probably yes, you want to when you get to a particular point. But that is also, again, in the future. That is an area of development within that particular area. And what sort of things do we bring in when it comes to performance management? How do we manage people and how do we govern that? How do we give people autonomy? How do we make people feel part of the business and developing that? So these are experiences that, again, that we start to think about through our leadership development and what we need to be doing within the businesses. Learning and development, again, what we're actually thinking about within the business, within those people, where's their trajectory, what is that, where they're heading, and then ultimately the area of retention. How do we keep people embedded in our business? How do we make them feel connected, make them feel as though they themselves are on this particular growth journey and learning journey? So it's really important that we kind of identify the traditional model of talent in that regard and find out where this kind of connection to the university, this area of development, can actually really feature into what we're growing and what we're doing. So it's really important as well to understand that kind of from our perspective, that the nature of work is changing and that AI is modeling or changing various different dynamics within the way that we recruit, the way that we hire, the way that ultimately the jobs that we're going to be defining in the future may start to look like. And actually, when we start to think about that, there's more of that kind of feeling of generalism when it comes to the kind of jobs that we're developing and thinking through within that. So there are three major shifts that are happening within the world of work, one of which is that technological shift where AI and the future of digitalization and the future of work exists. There is the social changing areas, the globalization, the access to a workforce that just doesn't necessarily sit within the UK, that can actually have an outreach aspect of what it's doing and go beyond particular borders. And then there are those intergenerational shifts. There is a demographic shift that is happening fundamentally within our world, and that is that we are all getting older. And that demographic is turning the table, if you like, the pyramid of we have younger employees before in the 1950s, and we had a very small older population. Now it's completely the other way around. We've got a very, very small, narrow base of younger people, and we've got a very heavy elderly population that's sitting on top. But that doesn't mean to say that there is a disconnect between that. What we need to be able to be thinking about is how do we utilize the experience and knowledge of the older people for the benefit and for the improvement and the access and the gains of the younger people. So thinking about our workforce and that in that multi-generational mindset is actually something which is again of value to the younger people, but is also equally valuable to older people as they are, you know, exiting their employment, maybe exiting businesses, and how do we reuse those skills? How do we keep those skills really, really relevant? So there was an article which was written up in HBR, Harvard Business Review, back in 2018, which really went into this particular area of development. And it was kind of looking at the technological shifts, the way workforces were ultimately sort of kind of being experienced, how they were becoming more sort of dynamic in their particular structure. And it was kind of scary as well, because the article kind of referred to the fact that a bank, somebody like, I think it was either Deutsche Bank or Dresdner Bank, one of the big German banks who have got 97,000 employees, was suggesting that by 2027, that half of that workforce would be replaced by autonomy or sort of technologies and autonomous kind of machines or whatever it was in that regard. And I think we're seeing that obviously with the traditional high streets where branches are being closed and basically being replaced. But at the end of it all, humans' involvement within the workforce is all about creativity. It's all about looking to the future. It's about scenarios. It's about testing the wider kind of gambit, the wider area of development. And I think this is, again, a part of that really enriching our businesses by engaging with the younger generation, by engaging with the student bodies and actually modifying the way that we're thinking, getting those insights into our business, those perspectives of the next generation, the values, the core values, what they're looking at, how they are engaging with us, what they're doing in that regard. So I think there's an awful lot of anxiety around the workforce and how it is going to be changing over the future. But I think from our perspective, we grow our businesses and we think about our businesses. I think it's really important that we actually start to engage in that level and get those insights and get what's important within that, the working environment, the way that there is agility and, you know, within that particular space. And ultimately, what is the nature of human work going forward when it comes to innovation, when it comes to new ideas and, you know, areas of creativity, thinking beyond the current mindset, thinking beyond the current boundaries of our contained thought and going into that next generation. And I think there's a lot there from a human perspective that's really encouraging. And it actually starts by us really engaging with those younger people within our workforce. So agile working in that regard and the liquid workforce is something that we really need to contend with, and that what employees of the future really need to start to think about. How do we accommodate different views, different world points? How do we engage with technologies which are deemed at the end of the day to be destructive, but at the same time can be really enhancing when it comes to the way that we work and what we can do within that? And also looking at that broadness, that globalization. And again, I think you'll find that when you work with universities, it's a broad spectrum of people. It's an international environment that they are very sort of kind of conditioned to. And you will actually get that much more, if you like, breadth of insight, geographically expansive way of looking at things that actually then brings in cultural shifts and ways that we can actually start to think about our business. And it's really important at that point that we're then again thinking very much through about what it is, that vision-led aspect of leadership, how our businesses are developing, where they're heading, where within that does the workforce of the future start and need to be sort of enhanced and developed. I think there are always challenges around sort of building businesses and thinking around those areas. And we'll touch on a couple of those in a minute. But actually, when we've got that kind of creativity boost coming from that diverse area of development, the international environment that we're engaging with, and that opportunity that then manifests itself within that, I think that really is quite an encouraging way of building and thinking through our businesses and the needs that we have. So what we need to do to actually start to create some kind of engagement, some sort of kind of idea within our businesses in terms of the kind of people that we're trying to attract. And this is understanding our culture, understanding at the end of the day what matters to us, but also equally what matters to our employees. So really building a value proposition in your workspace that's relevant for the employees of the future. So always asking and always engaging with them about their expectations, always understanding where financial reward it aligns to emotional security, aligns to what they get in terms of autonomy, that kind of thing. It's really building a proposition which is attractive, but is also at the same time works for the business and works for the employee. And it's really kind of thinking through that exchange, that relationship between them. Because what you really don't want to be doing in business, and what I see and what I've seen many, many times, is businesses where retention has disappeared very, very quickly. And there is a real sort of onboarding effort throughout this, but ultimately people become frustrated, they become disconnected into that particular process, and then they find themselves at odds in that particular world. So if we invest time and effort in building this kind of employee value proposition, then ultimately we're building a much stronger connection between ourselves, our businesses, and the future of the employees. So it's really important that we go through that particular process there. And it's, again, how we can embed these things into this. And I know that thoughtful businesses are really the ones at the end of the day that have that kind of holistic approach to it. They understand that from a leadership perspective, that they want to build that retention process through their business, and they want to actually work with them. So building that value proposition is really important in that regard. Equally as important is understanding the key drivers that sit behind everything, behind those relevant bits around the business. And I think that, again, that's really sort of kind of fundamental. So the sustainability goals, I was reading something the other day about how far behind we are in terms of delivery of these goals. That the world is a kind of a challenging place to actually bring a lot of these goals to fruition. But at the same time, I don't believe that we should do anything other than kind of focus in on these, because they do sit as a key kind of driver of activity and value orientated connection between ourselves and the businesses. And I think that's really important as well. So aligning ourselves to what matters to us. And again, the challenge is that we can all go through the list of these 17 goals and actually start saying, well, actually, I agree with pretty much every one of them in some shape or form. And that's fine. So there's crossovers, but then it's, again, about priorities within that. What matters to us the most? Where can we align ourselves? Having a strategic bent within that particular world, where we're saying we're looking maybe at the world of work and where we can improve work, the quality of education, how can we enhance the level of education? What are we delivering in that particular process? There are lots of ways that we can actually start to do this. And again, it becomes a really important part when we're thinking about the recruitment process, because the people that come to us will be aligned to these goals as well. And they will feel more connected to what we're doing. So it becomes a really important sort of almost a beacon by which we can grow, build, and develop our networks in that particular world. So these goals, they ultimately, say to us, well, okay, where's the situation now? What is it that we're actually aiming to do within that particular space? What can we actually do within that world in terms of the goals, and where can we be heading within the future? And I guarantee that when we start talking about these and we start thinking about the how is our output impacting in a particular sector, what is it really doing within that? We're starting to open up those narratives, those conversations that will really help us when we start on our journey into recruitment or retention, if we're already recruiting people. And it's getting us into that conversation and getting us to think about that. So thinking about these goals is really important, aligning ourselves to them, promoting them, advertising them, being a part of them. That's really valuable as well. So two mistakes that we constantly see in the world of hiring, and I have done it for many times, is that we actually end up hiring only when we're necessary to do so. In other words, we have a backlog of work. We're growing, we're hitting that particular constraint, and then all of a sudden we say to ourselves, well, gosh, we need to hire. And the problem with that is that hiring processes tend to be quite lengthy in what we're doing. There tends to be a delay within the system of hiring, both from the point of view of finding people, interviewing people, letting people move on from their existing employment, coming into our world. It can be a 30, 60, 90-day transitional period, depending on who we're hiring within that particular area. And at the same time, our focus is on this, when at the end of the day, our customers are actually asking us to deliver something else. So we've got to manage the operational aspects of our business through the growth side of things, whilst at the same time engaging with the hiring process. And this becomes a blockage within the area. And one thing gives way. We either hire the wrong people because we reach for those people that are available and not those people who are actually aligned to what we're trying to achieve. And then from the other perspective of it, right, we lose our customers, which frustrates the people that are actually charged with bringing those customers on board, or it creates negativity in the world outside of us. And then all of a sudden we become frustrated because we're losing customers and not hiring the right people. So anything that we're doing within this particular area needs to be strategically relevant to where we want to be heading. In other words, there's a degree of bringing about foresight, planning, and understanding into our business so that we're starting to engage with this process in a pre-growth way. We're actually thinking about it from the other area of development. We're actually thinking about hiring people, not just simply for doing the job, but hiring people for what they can bring in beyond that particular piece of work. Where can they actually exist within our business to actually grow and develop that work? How can we engage with them? How can we develop them? How can we work with them? And ultimately, whether we can put something into the process that makes things feel as though there is a natural kind of journey, a pathway into this particular area. And I'm really sort of kind of passionate about this idea of bringing people through and really creating those levels of opportunity as and when we can. Yes, there is always a cost around this. Yes, we have to understand that we can't, there are risks in the terms of cost, but actually it's about preempting a lot of those particular costs down the line. There is nothing more expensive than hiring the wrong person and having to let them go. Either from the perspective of the amount of money that you've just spent on the hiring contracts and putting into place all of those and working with maybe an HR consultant and all the rest of it, and actually at the end of the day finding that that person is a square peg in a round hole, and then you end up having to let them go. Then you end up kind of having to go through this entire process in terms of time, energy. And the number of people, again, that have been through that and said that to me, oh, I've hired people in the past and it's gone horribly wrong. The bottom line is that they are blaming the employee and not really looking at what the business can be doing instead. So it's this connection between pre-planning, focus around that, and actually de-risking the process of growth as we move our businesses forward. And that's, again, a big, big part of this. So what we always kind of think about within businesses, that businesses need a pulse. They need something at the end of the day, which is of, kind of value to them in what they're doing. They needs to be a rhythm within this particular world. And if you can create something within your business, both from the point of view where the business has that kind of level of activity, pulse, interaction, engagement, all of those things, every aspect of your business will work that much better. So regular meetings are a fundamentally important part of business development. Having a regular show up on a Monday morning, a regular monthly meeting that brings people together to have conversations, a regular quarterly meeting that sets bigger objectives and aligns those particular objectives to the working, so that you've got those objectives and key results and you're focused upon that within the business. All of those things, they add a rhythm, a pulse to what we're actually trying to achieve. We can do the same through our employment as well. We can do the same within a business where we're developing a pulse, where we're creating that rhythm, and at the end of the day, we're doing something within the business which continues and maintains that level of connection within it. So that pulse, that rhythm that we can do, right, can actually really help in that particular way. And one of the things that we suggest, and it's a model that we've kind of created in this particular world, and that is what we call the pulse model. And it really is this. It's just setting up this area of acquisition of internships, placements, maybe whatever it needs to be in that particular world. But it's around this whole idea of planning our business on a growth trajectory, understanding that we really need to start to engage with a employment strategy, ultimately opening those pathways to our university, developing our leadership and skills through the work that we're doing within this, and creating this on a, if you like, a circular pathway. So having regular internships into our business and having summer placements into our business, engaging with schools when they come into our business on a regular basis that maps to their particular calendars, their particular needs, but ultimately starts to, if you like, develop ourselves, but develop them. They go back into their communities, they become advocates for our business, they talk about our business, they grow our communities within that. The next generation are our customers. The next generation of our employees are people who are already aware and connected to our brand. They are already aware and connected to who we are. So it's about that level of preparation, putting that pulse back into our business, letting us go in through that kind of process of acquisition, of growth within that particular space. And it's, again, not just looking at it from the point of view of where universities reside. Again, when I started to work within the region, one of the things that I started to do was go out and do enrichment engagements with schools, because I wanted to understand what the next generation beyond the other generation were talking about when they were thinking about businesses, careers, opportunities, what we could share with them in terms of that, of work, of working with them within that particular field. And I think that's another area of development within that area. We're actually... The one thing we get when we go to universities, we get this opportunity presented to us in the world of, if you like, startups, businesses within that particular area. But actually, schools need to be included within that particular cycle at a young age. They need to be developed. They need to be thought about. They need to be there. There's a home in our business to take on that level of people and actually give them experience, give them some sort of relevant environment to practice out what it is that they're looking to do. And then ultimately, when they then go to university, to grow their confidence, grow their skill sets, bring in a new level of learning, then we can again start to think about how we can, engage with them and ultimately grow within that particular space. So that's the kind of message that we wanted to create within this particular world. How can we develop that whole kind of area of growth, area of development, and putting that pulse back in to the business? So from that sort of kind of area where we are, the preparation of it, what does, kind of understanding, what does our future look like? And one of the things, the bits of work that we do with a lot of businesses is when we start talking about roadmaps, we start thinking about vision, the objectives of where we want to be within the business. Ultimately, we start to put those into the objectives and key results that we work with businesses around. And what we're trying to actually think about within this, what is your vision within the business? So this, if you like, is our kind of representation of our vision, our future within that, full of collaboration, full of learning events, building of networks, creating sort of kind of an experience where it's exciting, where there's a space where people can feel involved, looking for opportunities, feeding into that particular area, putting resources into the business, and ultimately growing our business within that particular framework. And I think this preparation work is all around building roadmaps. And I love this kind of concept. And I do this again a lot within what we're trying to do within our businesses and what we do with other businesses, is building this particular roadmap. And I think that that's the direction of travel that we're heading. And it's also the means and the mechanism by which we start to actually then populate the roadmap of the business. If you think about that business model canvas, if we're doing one for 5 years out, 4 years out, 3 years out, 2 years out, 1 year out, that's our roadmap for development, our roadmap for growth, about where we want our businesses to be, the impact that we want our businesses to be creating in that period of time, and ultimately how we populate that roadmap in terms of hiring, but also in terms of the operational side of our business, the value propositions, the revenue streams that we would anticipate that we may need to be finding, all of those relevant areas within that piece of development. So the roadmap is something at the end of the day that kind of aligns all of those aspects. If we're looking at a particular growth trajectory within our business, and our hiring is not pointing in that direction, then ultimately we're going to be falling behind, or we're going to be reaching for those employees. And at that particular point, we're in that particular world of having to sort of rely on our immediate networks, on what's happening within that world. And if we're in a hot sector, what happens is that those employees become premium employees. So if our roadmap dictates that we are looking for people to develop a particular technology over a period of time, then we need to start thinking about how do we start connecting and engaging with people who may be at the forefront, or at least at the start of their careers in that particular piece of technology development. And that will allow us to then start to think about how we then look at where we want to embed some of those internships, some of those placements within what we're trying to achieve within the business. And I think this, again, is strategically coming back into line. It's giving ourselves that depth of view, if you like, and asking ourselves, what do we really need to be getting into that particular space? So the kind of the roadmap, that one of the things that we do again with the businesses, that's a traditional roadmap. We present a statement of where we are. We'll do a canvas in that 5-year period to say what you want you're doing. And these are the areas that we populate. How do our value proposition change over the period of time? Where is our growth in customers coming from? What is the sales and marketing strategy underlying that particular growth strategy? And then at the end of it all, we've got all of that relevant bit, the technology roadmap, the innovation roadmap, sustainability, impact, social impact, and then talent acquisition, recruitment, and employment development. What strategies are we embedding within that that's going to keep us fresh and keep us going forward in that particular space? And it doesn't matter whether we're developing a £100 million business, or whether we're developing a business which is going to be, you know, maybe something which is going to achieve what we really want to achieve, 4, 5, £10 million business. At the end of the day, we all need to understand that direction of travel. And this, if we start populating this, and it just brings it to life. It just says, oh, this is where we need to be starting to work on that particular roadmap. If I'm anticipating that I need 5 or 10 people in a particular area, I can start thinking about what actions I can do today to actually start to build out that piece of strategy. How does that work? How does that go on and develop within that particular space? So from that perspective, in the model that we're looking at, that university engagement, busting some myths, basically that, you know, dealing with universities is a bureaucratic nightmare, that there are big communication gaps in terms of the way we talk to students or academia or whatever it is within a business, and that there is a difference between the two, the way the businesses work and academia work. Well, in reality, there isn't, because there are ways of communicating, and students themselves are absolutely open to be in multiple different ways. So from that perspective, you know, there are lots of ways that we can strike up that level of communication. There is also this area of potentially not knowing how to engage with them. And that's, again, why we've done an event like this, is to open up some of those pathways, to make it simpler to everybody to understand that there is a process of reaching into a university and starting those conversations, and actually saying to people, these people will work within this particular space. The one thing that we notice when we do iTeens programs and we bring university students to work on real world problems, and there is an immediate sort of kind of, what do I need to be doing? There's a fear factor almost in some of the businesses, the way they present these challenges. And we say to them, it's not about that. It's about letting these people have their creativity, their moments to actually work within that particular area. And they will learn how to modify their language. And it's part of what we talk about, how to actually start to communicate across that spectrum into businesses. And one of the clarion calls of British business is always to say university students aren't prepared for the world of work. You know, they're not business savvy. Well, actually, businesses have to think that's your responsibility as much as anybody else's. We have to make our students, and we have to educate our students to become business savvy. So all of these things we can do within this particular space, and what we can actually achieve within that. So we can provide that overcoming the fear of the unknown, getting people by doing simple processes of working together, bringing it in those particular areas, tapping into the resources, and ultimately simplifying that particular process, which is opening up those pathways to the universities. So leadership and learning, this is about us. This is about how we develop as leaders, how we develop ourselves, but also we practice. Leadership, like everything else, is a muscle, right? And if we don't practice that it goes weak. It becomes less effective. And too many businesses get involved in the daily macerations of what they're actually all about. They get involved in the delivery. They get involved in all of that. And they struggle when it comes to actually stepping out and coming off the hamster wheel and looking back and starting to make some of those strategic decisions within the business, which is understandable. And it's always around that. But we need to create those breaks, those moments when we can do that. And this is ultimately something that we can do when we actually start to employ people like interns and people within that and take on the role of a leader within the business, that development of the individual, that making, if you like, aligning their aspirations and giving them a growth journey as well. And that will feed into ourselves and feed into our own practice and delivery. And that really helps us when we start to then think about where the business needs to be. If I've practiced my leadership all the way through, when I get to a particular point and now all of a sudden I'm employing 20, 30, 40, 50 people, I'm hopefully that leadership would have fed down into the business and permeated multiple layers of the business so that my job becomes less of a dominant part of spending my entire time being that person. I can actually look at other things within the business because I know that the business has got those layers of leadership, those layers of that kind of that kind of vision of leaves of leadership within it that are ultimately bringing people along and creating it. But this takes practice. It takes engaging with people and learning within that particular area. So your job as a leader of a business, your job as somebody within that particular is the guiding hand. And ultimately we guide our hand into those particular areas of development as we drive and move our businesses forward. So schools, and I touched on it, and I think we got Lindy here and she talk a little bit about the schools initiative that she's involved with in that regard. But I do fundamentally believe that we forget about schools and we think kids are too young and all the rest of it. Actually, children are probably about the greatest levelers of all of this. And again, I think that they are so open to turn businesses into games, into ways of working, into learning environments, into having fun within that. And one of the things that I used to have done in the past, and I continue to kind of champion in that regard, is getting businesses to actually spend time in their school systems. We're parents, we've got our own kids or grandkids in my case or whatever. But at that particular point, when we actually start to give back into the school system and start to find ways of reaching back into it through enrichment programs, enrichment days and all the rest of it, we're actually thinking about the future. We're thinking about the one bit of future that leads into the next bit of future. And again, it connects us to that piece of thinking. These are the future workforce. These are the future customers. And I, for one, feel very strongly that we owe it to the next generation behind that in terms of opportunity creating and what we can develop and what we can deliver for them there. So again, stepping into that world is a really important space for us. Ultimately, in terms of what that kind of activity really delivers, is it's about brand awareness, about enhancing the brand. It's about developing the brand from our perspective. And it's also about giving us the opportunity to move forward. And so what we would say is to anybody that engages with this university system, creates this circularity of testing out with interns, with placements, with summer sort of kind of school interns or working with schools or doing various bits and pieces within that particular area, is very much about, right, how that shines a light on your brand and ultimately makes your brand that much more accessible, that much more approachable, and very much aware. And also, it just builds advocates into your business and people that go away from your business, but actually will work with your business in the future. And on that note, right, I'm going to stop now talking. Thank you very much for your attention on our kind of take and our model around that. I want to hand this over to Tom, because Tom is somebody that I've known for many years, and I've known in his business, both from when it was Creative Quills, and I know from Constellation as well, in what he was doing in terms of his enthusiasm and engagement for building businesses through this particular mechanism. So I'd like to just introduce Tom Brew and hand over to him, if that's okay.
Hi, thanks, James. I don't want to have to look at my face throughout this, but I suppose I'm going to have to. That's fine. I'll give you a little bit of background first. I'm going to kind of do a kind of 10 or 15 minute piece, and then I'm quite keen to throw over to questions if there's anything particularly people want to kind of touch on and ask about. But yeah, as James said, my name is Tom Broom. I'm the managing director of Constellation Marketing. We are an agency that's based in the Innovation Centre on the University of Essex campus, and the type of services around marketing that we work on range from kind of initial strategies, so sitting down with our clients to understand what it is they want to achieve and helping put that kind of roadmap in place for how they do that. We do work around branding and design, we develop websites, and we write lots of content. And the content writing is going to be quite crucial to the bits that I talk about next, and that's definitely the kind of origin of the company. So when James asked me whether I'd come and have a chat about the way that we've utilised talent, the way that we've kind of utilised the university and the various schemes that they had, I went away and I drew out a bit of a timeline, which you can see here, kind of charting back from when it first began, from that kind of first interaction with the University of Essex specifically. And it was quite a nice little journey, actually, down memory lane, that, you know, from where we were initially and those kind of first steps that I took when it was just myself to, you know, some of the plans that we've got coming up in the future as well, and how the use of students at the university, the use of the kind of the resource and the talent that is just on our doorstep has completely changed the way that the agency is run. It's helped with the direction of travel in terms of the services that we offer, the type of clients that we want to work with, and ultimately the kind of aspirations of the business as well. And that kind of injection of kind of talent and different kind of mindsets as well has, you know, been actually, you know, instrumental in any successes that we've had. So kind of going back to the very beginning, as I said, it's the marketing agency that I founded, and this was back in 2011. So I just finished university myself. Throughout that time, I've done a lot of kind of freelancing, working with agencies, primarily in London and around the Midlands, which is where I was with my kind of university degree. And I came back to Colchester and thought the kind of work that I was doing around copywriting, around content writing for websites, for brochures, for all that kind of messaging piece, I quite liked that. That seemed quite enjoyable. And as the kind of I suppose the routes into the kind of careers that I could have, I hadn't really explored adequately, I suppose. I thought I'll start a business. I'll take this kind of freelancer work that I've been doing and see whether there's a model there for kind of developing out a business. And I did. And for the first, I worked out kind of 4 or 5 years, it was just myself. So it was very much that freelance model, a lot of kind of transactional content. So these agencies that I would work with would build a website and then they'd ask me to fill it. And so it was very, very kind of give and take in that way. And it wasn't until probably about years 3 or 4 that I really started to think about how I could get more involved at the very kind of front end of marketing. So thinking about strategy, thinking about purpose, talking to clients about their values, their tone of voice, all the, you know, how this piece of content that I was creating would fit into that kind of wider scope, that wider marketing output. And I realized that actually there was an opportunity here to diversify the business and move more into that kind of strategic end. Now, in order to do that, we would probably need more than just myself delivering the services, because to run through that process, then deliver the content, as well as trying to build a business and everything that kind of exists with that, it felt to me was probably going to be a little bit too much, especially with a young family at home. And so it was at that point I had recently, probably in the last year, moved to the university campus to be in the offices over here, and started to hear about this idea of internships. So I sat down with a woman called Christine Bellamy, and she kind of ran through exactly what Essex Interns, which is the name of the University of Essex program for this, what that was about, what the expectation was of me as an employer, what the expectation would be of any intern who was coming in. And I was terrified. The idea of actually being an employer was completely alien to me. I'd worked on my own for so long. But the real things that jumped out to me from that conversation were the kind of low risk, really, to put it bluntly. For me as an employer, rather than going through what could be quite an elaborate recruitment plan to bring somebody in who I wouldn't necessarily think was right, after a period of time, or know was right, and couldn't qualify that because I hadn't done it before, and until a period of time of them being in the business, and then having them leave, that process, that kind of hefty process, now that was, it could have been, you know, really detrimental to what I was trying to do, what I was trying to build. Essex Interns gave me an opportunity to bring somebody in for what was a 3-month period. It de-risked it by having a grant associated with it as well. So we were in the position where we would pay for the 3 months of work that they were here. They'd go onto the payroll, and it would be a kind of salary rate. I think we did whatever the national living wage was at that point. But at the end of it, you could recoup a big chunk of that. So I took the plunge. I went through that process. I worked very closely with Christine and her team to make sure I positioned it just right, to make sure that I kind of looked like a credible business for something like this. And by the end of it, I had, I think, probably around 30 or 40 applications from students who thought it might be quite interesting to work within a small business, or to sample, what it was like working in a marketing agency or with someone in the marketing space. And by the end of it, I was greedy. I actually took 2 interns that first time. And what was kind of startling to me was that I had people at both ends of the spectrum. So there was one woman that came into the business, and she was actually an alumni. And this is something that hadn't even occurred to me at the time, is that you've got people who are studying for maybe 3 years at the university, going on to masters, going on to PhDs, but you also have alumni who have access to these programs and to these schemes for, I think, maybe up to a couple of years after. That probably varies depending on which institution you're using. But this was someone who had been out there in the world of work. She was accomplished already, but maybe hit a bit of a dead end. She just wasn't really feeling thrilled with the work that she was doing, and wanted to take the plunge, take a punt on what it might be like to come in, work within a small business environment. It was low risk to her as much as it was to me. And we hit it off immediately. It was kind of a match made in heaven for that particular time we were in the business. And actually, over a period of time, probably 2 or 3 years, she grew in importance, and she became a director of the company. So from those very kind of that early phase, that early kind of fear that I had, somebody came in, and because I was, running a small business at the time, they could really grasp that opportunity and grow with me. And as I say, that became really integral for our growth over that period. The other end of that was somebody who was in their 2nd year, and they were doing, I believe, the English literature course that the University of Essex runs. So an accomplished writer, really good at what she did, but a sponge, an absolute sponge, wanting to learn all the time. And she came in. She was probably, after that first 3 months, we extended for a further year. So we kind of worked with her throughout the 3rd years of her study, at the 3rd year of study, before she eventually went on to kind of pastures new. But again, it was just a great opportunity to bring that energy into the business, and that additional capacity as well. And for that first 3 months, de-risked, because we were able to recoup the money in terms of a grant, but also use it as I guess what you typically have as a probation period. So knowing that afterwards she was going to be ideal for the role that we had. So that was 2016. Those were kind of those very kind of early days of just understanding what this program was about, what actually employment was about. Fast forward a little bit and kind of getting to 2018, and I felt that I was becoming quite a professional at utilizing the intern program. We had other writers come into the business, lots of content writing, lots of marketing kind of executives more broadly as well. So people who would come in and help us with social media. And this wasn't just for what we were delivering for clients, so giving us extra capacity to deliver on the work that we were doing, but also actually working on our own marketing. And I don't know if any of you maybe work in marketing or have no marketing companies, but it's kind of like the builder, I suppose, whose house is always under development. You never have the time to actually focus on your own stuff because you're so busy, trying to work and kind of make a living. So that again was a really fantastic opportunity to bring people in, give them some structure, give them a plan, but ultimately let them drive. We can only do as much as we can do in terms of actual kind of creation and delivery, but let them bring ideas to us. Let them kind of have an opportunity to come to the table and bring some of those kind of that fresh impetus that maybe we wouldn't be able to have just because of working constantly on the day to day. So jumping forward a little bit more, it was 2020 where the kind of the real change in terms of the agency came, and that was with the again through the internship program. I was able to employ over probably that 12-month period 2 content writers who were both studying their PhDs. And that, again, was an absolute game changer because it just skyrocketed the kind of service that we were offering in that space. Felt so confident, in fact, with the kind of content support that we had within the business, it has enabled us to diversify into different areas. So those two writers, one of which is still with us, she's our senior content writer, kind of really underpins that part of the company, which enabled me to really progress what I wanted to do in terms of strategy. It also enabled us to reach out and bring in some design support to focus on the development work that we wanted to do in terms of websites. And again, starting from something quite small, it probably at that point was again a 2 to 3 month internship for both of them, that then grew and grew and grew as their importance within the company grew. And from their perspective as well, while working on their PhDs, this was actually probably some quite light relief initially, but also enabled them to, really kind of go through that process, knowing that they had the stability of, a company like ourselves in the background. So those were kind of the key milestones, some of the key milestones that I wanted to mention, and kind of bringing everything bang up to date, something that I've been saying to quite a few people actually in the Innovation Centre here. So other businesses who are kind of looking at the potential of bringing interns in. We did something quite different back end of the summer in terms of what we'd usually do. So as I've kind of outlined, typically what we would do is bring people in who had similar skills to us. So content writers, designers we've had before, marketing execs, people who understand social media. What we did this time was ever so slightly different in that we had a very specific project that we wanted someone to work on. In terms of our business, what I'm very keen to do is scale it and grow. And part of the work I think that is around that is something that I keep referring to as process mapping. So how can we take everything that we do within our business, every single process, and streamline it? Well, the first thing you have to do in order to understand what those processes are, what they look like, and how they could potentially be made more efficient is to document them all. And so we as a team, a creative team, I'm going to add, got lots of bits of paper and lots of colourful pens and had half a day just trying to jot down as many processes as we could think of. Kind of what is the line from here to here, everything that happens in between, who's responsible, the materials needed. And that went from sales process, from a branding exercise that we would do, writing a case study for a client, developing a website, as many processes as we could possibly think of. And that was great. And we really enjoyed it. And the only issue we then had is that they all existed on a big piece of paper, which isn't exactly something that you can follow meticulously when you're, trying to bring new people into the business or scale the business in the way that I want to. And so we reached out to Essex Interns with a different brief. So rather than someone coming in to support us in terms of delivery of work, we wanted someone who could come and take our mad ramblings and give them some kind of uniformity. And what we found was a girl who was in her second year, actually, who was doing computer science. So something that feels a little bit separate, maybe certainly from the creative part of what we offer. And where she had worked previously, a lot of her work was around kind of data visualization. So she was building platforms, she was collating data for, I believe, a company that deals in kind of solar and drones and things like that. And I think what was really interesting about that is that she was coming into it with a very kind of methodical and very data-led approach. And we had to plug in our information into that kind of process. And so it was fascinating to have her sit there and kind of, as we were talking through the way that we typically do things, and light up on maybe parts of the process we hadn't even thought of. Or what if this goes wrong? Or what if they come back with this particular thought? Okay, well, actually, we would have to go around again. We'd have to redo that part of the project. And it's like, okay, right, that takes us off in this direction. And the thought process completely changed. And what we got at the end of it was built into our project management system that we use, something called ClickUp, which I would highly recommend if anybody needs a project management system, were these flowcharts that built into them had some very detailed understanding of every step of the processes that we have within our business, all of the assets and materials that we might need, from presentations to email scripts to social media templates, just absolutely anything you could think of, that had been documented and captured in such a way that really anybody who is competent in this space could be plugged in and immediately be able to pick up and run with a lot of the work that we do for our clients. Now that as a piece of work has been, invaluable to where we're kind of planning to go over the next 3 to 5 years. And obviously, as I came into the conversation, James, you were kind of talking about those roadmaps. Well, this was step one for us in terms of actually what our roadmap looks like. Well, we really need to understand how we scale, how we grow, what those kind of different job roles look like. So yeah, something that I've been saying to lots of people, don't just think in that kind of that one lane. How can they support my business in terms of, it may be marketing, it may be, one specific thing. Try to think a little laterally. Think of things a little bit different. What's actually a missing challenge within your business? And you'll be, I think pleasantly surprised with the kind of skills and talents that you can bring in, that could, make that kind of tangible difference.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Tom. Really,
No
really
worries at all.
interesting. Really interesting. Any questions for anybody? All right. Okay. Well, I mean, by
So
all means,
comprehensive I was.
by all means, put anything in the chat that may leap out. I love that idea of going off tangent, not just simply focusing on maybe a missing skill set within the business, but actually thinking about where does the business need to be, and maybe getting that preparation and work going through that particular side. So that brings our attention a little bit on to what's the current sort of world of offers that exist within the university. And so I'm delighted to introduce our next speaker, and that's this lady here, Katerina Canlis. And Katerina, you there?
Yep, I'm here. Thank you. Thanks,
Right.
James. And thanks, Tom. That's a really good introduction to Essex, well, a very thorough introduction to Essex interns. I've got a bit of information about the MBA consultancy project, and there's a range of other things that we do as well. So I'll try to cover as much as possible. And I think also just welcome anybody to reach out to us and get in touch if you want to look and explore different ways that you can kind of access the talent of students that we have. So the consultancy project. So our MBA students, I think one of the things that James said as well was about the international community at the university as well, and having that sort of diversity. So our MBA students will also come to Essex from all over the world, from all different levels of kind of career experience. Some may have 10 years of experience in their industry, and they'll be coming to study an MBA to kind of solidify and to kind of gain that insight into being a consultant, in thinking critically, applying an innovative solution to a problem. So as part of the MBA program, they can undertake a consultancy project with an employer. So we invite employers, many different employers of all sizes, to submit a project brief that an MBA can work on. So we have also for the last couple of years gone to the companies in the Innovation Centre as well, because that's been a really good link and a really good opportunity to kind of grow that partnership. So for the specific project, it would be there's a whole range of different topics that it could be. We've had some that were about kind of maximizing efficiency and time when it comes to robo-surgery in the NHS. We've had ones about kind of scaling up businesses. We've had marketing, looking at kind of EDI and hiring processes. So there could be a range of different topics, and there could be topics that are relevant to your business, or a kind of a problem or an area where you're looking for kind of an innovative, a 360 approach to. And actually, with what Tom was saying about how sometimes there could be kind of lateral thinking there, and you could have a candidate come to you that's actually come from a very different background, and that could perhaps provide a fresh perspective on the problem at hand. So that could be another potential benefit that could come from engaging with the project. So our MBAs can work on their program can work on their consultancy project from March, if they started in October. If they started in January, then they'll usually start working on the consultancy project from June. So we're open for any companies to submit proposals, and following on from this, I can send the information to James and send that around so that you've got that information to circulate. And the the project itself can be treated as confidential. It would just be yourself working with the student. They will have to submit project reports as part of their academic evidence as well. So it would also just be their academic supervisor that would see that work. Usually about 12 weeks that the MBA consultant would work with you. And in terms of expense, as a minimum, we would stipulate that you would be able to cover any out-of-pocket expenses for that consultant, and otherwise it would be a case of agreeing that between yourself and the consultant. So in addition to the MBA, there's a wide range of different things that we have, and I think as both you were saying before, it's kind of also based on the level, I guess, of risk, or kind of dipping your toe in, figuring out what's going to work for your business. Essex Interns is a fantastic place to start. There's obviously you've heard lots of information about that, but that's a good way to kind of start and get a feel for it. That could be available across all study levels. So yeah, you've got many different students, graduates, different levels of study who can apply to be on the Essex Interns programme. If you are posting roles, we also have a jobs board. So that's everything from part-time work to graduate roles. So you can also use the jobs board so that your vacancy can be seen by our community of students, and all of our graduates have access to that for life as well. So at the moment, I think there's 100,000 users on the jobs board. So a lot of people will be able to see the vacancy. It's a bit of a longer commitment, but we also have the option for our students to do an industrial placement year. So that'd be a whole year-long placement that students can do in industry. And lots of our programs will have short projects in different areas. So for example, there's a project for our master's students in translation. So they can work on a translation project with an employer. So if you're looking to kind of internationalize or kind of look at new markets, then that's one potential link there as well. We also have students doing business analytics, where they can come and do a short placement, about 12 weeks, also kind of working on using business analytics and using data to help solve problems and to help suggest solutions for your business as well. So wide range of things, and we've got our email address there as well. So if anybody wanted to reach out, and I'm really happy to have a discussion, because sometimes rather than overwhelming you with all of the different ways you can engage, it's good to have that one-to-one conversation and figure out where you're at, what you're looking for, and what's going to work best for you. But yeah, thank you. And if there's any questions, I'll just take a look, see if I haven't missed anything.
No, I think that's it. But if there are any questions, you can reach out. You can reach out to us directly, and obviously I will share all the details of contact and various things like that. And once Katerina shares it with me, I'll happily put it back out into the community. So thank you very much indeed, Katerina, for your time. Thank you for definitely for the sort of kind of insightful aspect of the next stage for a lot of things. I'm quite excited about the MBA placement side. I think it's a great opportunity for the local businesses. Really good. Thank you very much. Right, and so that brings us on to our final contributor tonight. That's a lady called Lindy Oscar, who's just, I think, come back from Panama, but she's somebody I knew and met within the area a long time ago via Colby, and it was somebody who was working with children in schools to improve back care. So she's a qualified osteopath, and she has this real passion for leveling the playing field for that next generation. And she's now just taken on this business, this idea, this concept around kids clubs and kids business kids club in this particular area. So I'm going to like to hand over very quickly to Lindy just to introduce her business and maybe just some things that we can think about when we think about sort of engaging with the next generation. So Lindy, thank you very much indeed.
Hello, hi, good evening everyone. Can you hear me okay? Is it okay? That's great. So thank you very much for your introduction, James. I'm heading up a business which is called Business Kids. and it's a program for young people to learn and develop business ideas and skills through play activities, really. And it starts from really young age, literally 3 to 4 years old, up until the ceiling is 60, 70, 80, 90. It's endless, to be honest. The key role is, like most schools, they don't teach the entrepreneurship, but it seems that they teach kids to be afraid of failure. And schools should be encouraging kids to try and fail, and then try again and try again. And so the whole idea with business kids is to strengthen the entrepreneur skills, but more importantly, to approach situations in an entrepreneur mindset. So the skills such as creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, communicating, that's not enough. We need to develop their skills, their mindset, basically, to have a strong set of entrepreneur skills. So the kids that we're working with and hoping to work with, I mean, they're very adaptable, flexible, and they need to see changes before they actually happen, so that they can prepare themselves for it, and to be able to identify opportunities and have the confidence to move forward. So that's what Business Kids is all about. And can an entrepreneur mindset be nurtured? Absolutely, as James said, and from a very young age it should be nurtured. And during the end of the program, the kids have the opportunity to design a business to sell to the general public, and they find this very exciting and engaging, going through the actual process. But the mission is not necessary for the young person to have a business at the end of the program, but it's to develop their entrepreneurial mindset from a very long age. So it's all about long-term building of confidence. So in a nutshell, that's what it, and we work with different models. So this is obviously a lion, and for leadership, and we've got the piggy bank for saving. So it's a lot of fun activities that we engage, really.
Brilliant. Is there anything particular that kind of you're looking for businesses to get involved with, or is your plans for that kind of thing to actually work with schools?
Yes, absolutely. We're looking for facilitators to help us run the workshops within schools, and just as that supporting platform, really.
Okay, all right, excellent. Well, we'll certainly put that out to the community and to the area. But thank you very much indeed, and we wish you all the luck and all the best for what should be a really exciting sort of development within it. Are you actually working with any schools at the moment? Have you got?
We're in conversation with a few organisations at the moment. Unable to disclose at the moment, okay. But at the beginning of the year.
Good. All right, excellent. All right, okay. Well, that's pretty much the end of the webinar and what we wanted to cover and what the topics that we wanted to explore. Generally, are there any questions people have got? Outside of that, I will share contact details with people, and anybody that wants to sort of kind of follow it up in that regard and see where it goes. But other than that, I shall let you return to your evenings, and thank you very much indeed for your time. I hope it was insightful. I hope you managed to get some value from it, and like I said, I'll let you know whether we're going to be doing another one in December or whether we'll bring them up again in January. I'd imagine it'll be early January before we'll get back. So in which case then, happy Christmas to everybody, if that's not too early to start to wish everybody that. All right, take good care, everybody. Thank you very much indeed for your time, and see you soon.